everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so you'll know when you're getting new episodes. And we just want to grow this project. I thank you in advance. Without further ado, let's get it rolling. The Shout Out Show. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is your brother, Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Please, I want to thank you for tuning in for today's show. If you're a first-time visitor, please click that subscribe button, the like button. We're trying to build up a community here on the Shout Out Show, build up our SOS family, if you will. And if it's your first time, I want to thank you for coming through. We hope that we make good use of our time and your time as well. For the old schoolers, the hardcore SOS family, the Shout Out Shout family, Shout Out Show family, thank you for coming back. I appreciate you each and every day. And I also say, listen, this thing does not happen because of me, but it happens in spite of me, because so many people have done so many great things, giving so much encouragement. We've got a lot of people behind the scenes trying to make this thing happen. And the biggest part of the show, of course, is my audience. So with that said, let me get to it. And I want to make a special announcement. I am going to have a sister on the show, inshallah, on Saturday. This is Sister Akia. Some of you know her story. Her son was a Muslim. He was in the service in the Navy. He was walking home for getting some burgers from White Castle for him and his wife, and he was murdered in Cincinnati. Now, I know people go, oh, murder, yes. But this is different because this sister actually forgave the murders of his son, and now the killer's family are working with her on this project to highlight the importance of gun control, highlights the importance of the value of life. And I want everybody to meet this lady. I know she's not a big star, but she's important to me. And if I think she's important to me, I think she's definitely important to you. So that's going to be Saturday. I'll be sending out some little stuff on that. So please keep your eye on it on Instagram and Facebook. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to give some shout outs here. People have come early. Sister Sultana, thank you. Sister Sultana makes the show go. I don't know if you guys know that. Sister Sultana, I need to get with you on this graphic for our guest on Saturday. And I want to give a shout out to Sister Ree, who I saw yesterday. I hope you are feeling better. So let me get to this subject matter, if you will. Our Throwback Thursday is a little bit different because people think it's music or y'all remember the summertime. Well, that's all good. But this Throwback Thursday is about protecting our women. Now, I'm taking as much of a nuanced approach to it, but I have been bothered. I don't know if it's the upcoming election or whatever it is, but I've been having flashbacks. I've been having, 2016 election flashbacks. And this title, this subject matter, protecting our women, it bothered me last night. I literally wrote up and said, this is going to be this subject matter. Because in protecting our women, I'm looking at where we are now, and women are in dire straits. Even though we have, if you will, even though we have a VP, a female VP, it still does not mitigate the issues that are going on. So let me continue to go forward here. Let me give a shout out to my mom. Mom, you can't see my picture, but I hope you can hear my voice. Technical problems with the elderly. All right. So let's start. The idea of protecting women bothered me in 2016. Let me tell you when it happened. It was during the GOP debates, if you will. The GOP debates. They had a female moderator. I can't remember her name. Female moderator. And they came to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's question was, sir, you have been quoted. Let me say this, quoted as saying, quoting women as fat, disgusting, sluts, And in the end, he goes, only Rosie O'Donnell. And here's the picture. Everybody laughed. Everybody laughed because he said, only Rosie O'Donnell. Now, whatever beef he has with Rosie O'Donnell, that's not my point. My point is the people laughed, and the people who laughed at that point in time were not just men. They were men and women and people who are supposed to be decision makers, influencers, somehow found that funny. And it began this thought process that I have to relate to you. Why I said we have to protect our women. Because I'm going to tell you guys something. You know, when I was born in 66, I'm not saying that, men were all, chivalry was all the rage. But the idea of women was connected to certain things. And I believe that it's been disconnected and in some regards replaced. The idea of women back in the day, brothers and sisters, was that a woman had historical context. In Africa, the real leaders of the villages were the women. The providers were the men, but the leaders were the women. I used to sit there trying to figure that out. And I heard a brilliant conversation with KRS-One and Nick Cannon, and I agree. The reason that you had a particular type of leadership back then was framed upon the fact that you had, wait for it, principles. Principles define leadership. If you had people who are unprincipled, you have people who are undisciplined, and therefore you had ineffective leadership. Let me explain to you the idea of the evolution of female leadership. The idea of female leadership is that it's always been, I want to say, attached to principles, but it was also, in many regards, able to be more flexible with principles than male leadership was able to be. Because male leadership was attached to a lot of different things. Power, which women didn't have, prestige, which women were kept from, and also status, which women didn't necessarily have. So women, I believe, back then, going back into the 70s, 60s, 50s, and even 40s in some regards, had this forged idea of principles that usurped a lot of what was going on in society. Now, I don't want people to get confused, but this is the thing I always remember about women when I was growing up, that women had a principal place in society. Grandma, mom, aunties, cousins, nieces, women had a certain status, but it was built on principles, meaning that in some regards, the idea was that the female was valued, I don't want to say differently, definitely differently, but it was valued higher. See, as you begin to look at what you see now, it's a situation scenario where we're not led by principles. Now, I don't know when this all start unraveling and things like that. I remember listening to rap music, and at one point, rap music was the hip hop, the hippie, the hippie, the hip hop, you don't stop the rock. Okay, and I loved that. And then another point, it became about conscious rap, the Queen Latifahs, the women who didn't call themselves bees, because they were still following in a principle. One of the greatest videos was called Ladies First, and that was with Moni Love and Queen Latifah. Listen to what I'm saying, Queen Latifah. Now, I'm not telling you this to get you gassed up, but I'm telling you it marked an era. And what that said was, everybody knows when the queen is out, you have to protect your queens. Let me continue. The further point was, back in the day of the 40s and 50s and 60s, pay close attention, it was the evolution of family, particularly in the Black community. Because if you go back to the late 1800s, the idea of family wasn't even couched in the idea of marriage. Marriage meant nothing between Black people in the late 1800s. And it became this thing that as men, particularly men, became a little bit more, I want to say not evolved, but let's say a little bit more accepted in society. To be accepted in society, guess what you had to do? You had to leave off certain principles. And those leaving off of certain principles led us into this downward spiral where we don't protect our women. In some regards, we can't even protect our women because we don't understand our women. We don't understand where the break was. You see, in some regards, the idea of principle, wait for it, has been replaced by, you ready? Principle has been replaced by fantasy. Men fantasize about women. Men don't look at women as principled as they should be. Now, hear what I'm saying. Look at you ever look at the models and da da da. You brothers, I love you, but you're not gonna get the Beyonces. You're not gonna get the Halle Berrys. You're not gonna get the Viola Davises. You're not gonna get the Cissy Tysons. You're not gonna get the Naomi Campbell. You're not gonna get them. And the reason you fantasize about them because you don't know their principles. The idea that you're never going to have access means that you don't have to have principles. Sadly, that carries over to the women who are our direct presence, the ones who are under our auspices that we are supposed to be respecting and growing, if you will. And because of that, we now see the problems. We now see in a situation, a scenario that's become a bigger problem moving forward. If you want to know what happened in the 2016 election, they won't say it, but I'm going to tell you, there were a large group of women that voted for Donald Trump. A large group of women. And the reason they were able to do that is because they didn't see principle coming from anywhere. They lost their principles. They lost the idea that somebody has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that I'm taken care of, that I'm protected. And fantasy filled in. This man could give it to me, despite all these other men out here. This man could give it to me. And they bought into the fantasy. And sadly, the fantasy followed them right into the voting booth. Now, as I go back, I'm going to tell you some of the most violent fights men have ever had. I'm not talking about murder, but I'm talking about neighborhood fights. Brothers and sisters, the biggest fight between two men, particularly black men or Latino men, is when you call or you go overboard and say something about somebody's mama. Let me share this with Andy. Hey, Andy, how you doing, brother? Oh, man, I know you, brother. Andy used to be a manager of one of the comedy clubs, and he was actually in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Man, him and his family were great people. His mother, I love your mother, man. I wish you the best, and it's just great, man. But he has a great idea. There you go. There you go. I appreciate you, man. And we got to talk, man. We got to talk, Andy. Hit me on Facebook because it's been too long. But this idea of women shaping men is such a fundamental idea that men cannot handle it. And so we rebel. Society, for lack of a better word, is a dude society. Women grow into what is consistently a dude society. Or let's just say it, white elite dude society. And in that society tends to feel as though it's self-made. It does not like reminders that it came from someplace. It is the fantasy that I'm self-made. You ever heard rich people say, I'm a self-made millionaire? Which is the farthest thing that I can, the farthest thing I can say. I'm self-made. You don't make yourself. It is the woman who frames all of society, all of civilization. It is compassion that keeps her grounded, that makes her, let's say this word. The compassion makes a woman, I'm going to say a woman's compassion is the compassion that gives you children, is the compassion that raises children, is the compassion that is so far away from promise. Now, I don't say promise, but power, but it has so much to do with promise. It has so much to do with potential. And it's not her own potential. I'm looking forward to this election upcoming. You know why? Because I want to see Mike Pence go against Kamala Harris. Mike Pence over here, but this is a mother. This is a mother, and she's going to talk to women about being a mother in a way that Mike Pence can only talk about just being a mother. You got a mother over here and you got a mother over here. Let me get back to the facts. This thing, brothers and sisters, we can't go away from. When I was young, my father taught me, whether he and my mom had a disagreement or not, I knew that my balance lied with my mother. I knew that I had to take care of my mother. When my parents split, it was crazy. I didn't know it happened. I was a grown adult. But the automatic emotion was that you have to take care of your mother. Like we all love our dads. We all love our fathers. Boys love their dads. Okay? But they adore their mothers. And let me say, what's this? Okay, we got one married couple. Thank you so much, Satana. I ain't know I was gonna have the geometry, but I love it. Thank you. My point is this. I sit in my own community and I go, what happened to the idea of heaven lies at the feet of your mother? And I said, is it really heaven lies at the feet of your mother? Or is it heaven lies at the feet of womanhood that produced your mother? Heaven lies at the feet of womanhood that produced this compassion. You know, it's really easy these days to claim that you don't have to do something, that you are above the law, that you are not, these things are not applicable to you, even if they are. Now, I'm saying all these things to say it is so easy today to just live a lie. It's so easy today because when you lie, you can do anything. When you lie, you can do anything. You, in your mind, you can be the president of the United States. In your mind, you can be rich. In your mind, you can have a cure for cancer. That lie allows you to do anything. But let's be careful. Every lie is always a pathway for the truth. It's always a pathway for the truth. So it's no secret to me that as we talk about minorities being oppressed, we talk about women being oppressed. Yes, women are the number one oppressed community in the world. Hands down, has always been that way. And I always ask why. Because a woman, just by being, not by knowing, just by being, creates a situation whereby her knowledge base, her position in the world is always going to be above men. Men operate to get above men. Smart men never operate to get above women because you never do it. Women can do things that men cannot do. And I'm talking about not just the physical thing, having children and things like that. Women are, for lack of a better word, connected to consciousness that men search their whole life for. That's why you hear quotes like, you know, I got to get in touch with my feminine side. Well, it says that you're not complete. Chromosomes are what? XX for women and XY for man. A man got to figure out how to get over to this other chromosome, that X, to make it real. And even then, it's just a temporal type of condition, a temporal type of connection, if you will. You know, that's why, for lack of a better word, you'll have more households led by women as opposed to households led by men. I mean, single women as opposed by single men. And I always wanted to figure that out. Like, I know some brothers that are raising their children, single men that are raising their children. God bless them, they're trying to do tremendous jobs. But I know a lot of single women who are not just raising children, they're raising several children. In fact, you have grandmothers raising their children's children. You see, a man can't do that. A man can't raise his children's children. You rarely hear about that. But I'm saying somewhere in the spiritual DNA that a woman has this thing. And I don't know if it's the relationship of birthing or that type of thing, but she never loses it. She never loses it. But she never loses the potential to be a great mom, never loses the potential to be a great educator, never loses the potential to be a great person for compassion, a target for compassion. And going back to the old days, what the old sisters had, I want to say old sisters, I want to say old school sisters had, was there's a direct chain of command, if you will. Let me say that, a very, very direct chain of command that connected this whole idea of what? Principles. Some of my greatest teachers had what? Principles. Some of my greatest teachers were who? Women. Principled women. Some of my greatest neighbors were who? Women. What kind of women? Principled women. That's not to say that husbands weren't great dudes. That's not to say that, that brothers don't do well. But in a clutch, I'm going to lean on the principles of a woman because a woman's principles are stronger. Let me say that again. A woman's principles are stronger. Now, I can't talk about what's going on today. Right now everything's kind of jumbled up. But let me add this thought. We have leadership. I won't say leader. We have leadership in an environment that pays absolutely no attention to principle. And this is important because if you don't have principle, you can't have law. And when you don't have law, and you don't have principle, you don't have meaningful culture. You see, that's the one thing that women or the idea of womanhood has always been able to produce. They've always been able to produce culture. They have a skill set, if you will, that allows them to move. Like if you're Muslim, right? You can go around the world and you can walk to a masjid, and it may be different types of Islam being practiced, but there's a certain nomenclature that you're going to do for prayer, for absolution, for fasting. There's certain things. Women have that. And what's been going on for the last 40 years is very calculated, a very evil, a very just insidious practice to make sure that women are, let me say, moved away from those things. So women are not principled on those things. Women are not developed. I want to say women are not encouraged to develop that kind of culture. They're encouraged like men to live in this fantasy, a fantasy. And so when you see a president lie, wallahi, lie to your face, and you go, what is this? How can he do that? It's because his leadership comes from a source that wasn't principled. He's not doing it to tick you off. He's doing that because it's a result of the culture that he's come from. Let me give a shout out to a couple people here. Big Z, what's going on, big brother? Walaikum assalam. Sister Kathina, big shout outs to your daughter. I see her daughter just finished basic training. God bless her. And this is my main man right here. I got to get you on the show, Brother Hatton. He's a deep brother. I want to talk to you about some Islamophobia stuff. So I appreciate you, everybody. Let me jump back on the show, though. So my point is, because I don't want to go over, but you see the slow evolution of women being moved away from principle. And the reason they're able to be moved away from principle is because we're not protecting them. We're not protecting them. And when I say we're not protecting them, it's because, you know what? The principles they put in us, we're not putting back in them. You dig? Like, if I'm not taught how to protect you, I won't protect you. It's sort of like, a farmer. If you don't teach me how to farm, there's not going to be any crops. And let it be television. These days, let it be social media. Let it be these blogs. But everybody is so in tune with fantasy that we don't teach the harsh realities of truth. And so we suffer, and we watch our women suffer. So when I'm watching the GOP debates back in 2016, and a female moderator goes, Mr. Trump, you've been accused. Wait a minute. You've been quoted as saying women are X, Y, Z, all kind of stuff. All kind of stuff. Pigs, sluts, whatever. And he goes, that's only true about Rosie O'Donnell. And everybody laughs. You got a problem. You got a problem. See, going to old school, I don't know how old y'all are, but if you saw an elder trying to struggle with some groceries, boy, you better hurry up across the street and help that lady carry them groceries. Even if you have to carry them all, you better carry them. Because if the story got back to my grandmother or my grandfather or mother, my father, it's a direct violation of the culture they were raising me in. Which means to say, I taught you all these things, and at the point in time you're supposed to put them in effect, you're not doing it. That's what I feared. That's what I feared. I feared, brothers and sisters, that my mother did not produce a person who's principled. And she would look at me. That's the hardest conversation you ever going to have. When you break a rule, when you break a law in your house, because your mother and your father taught you, particularly your mother. The worst whooping you ever got was not from, hear me say it, was not from your dad. The worst whooping you ever got from was your mother, and she didn't strike you at all. She gave you logic, and she gave you truth, and she gave you love and compassion while she did it. Let me give her a shout out. What's going on, Sister Susan? Yes, Happy New Year, everybody. Happy Islamic New Year. I forgot. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm on a roll here today. But as we begin to close this out, please, you don't have to go back 30, 20, 10 years ago. Go back yesterday. And when you see a sister, remind her that she should remind you that you're supposed to be protecting her. And you're supposed to be protecting her with the things that our parents have given them. This is not being chauvinist. This is not like, I'm saying the principles that my mother gave me protected me. So we're talking about things in a circle, in a cipher, if you will, which means that the currency is this principle. The currency are the laws that come out of this principle. The currency is the culture that comes out of this interaction. And I'm asking everybody, those are the things we need to tie into. Stop living the fantasy. Stop it. Because a fantasy is a lie. And like I said, when you lie, you can do anything you want to. I could tell you I'm white. You go, Preacher Moss is lying, but in my mind, I could be white. Hence the Dave Chappelle classic special about the black KKK member. Because you can lie to yourself like that. Think about this. How many people have gotten ahead in life with lying? That's number one. How many people have stayed ahead in life with lying? That's number two. And how many people have been happy with that station in life as a liar? Well, one of the most painful things that you could ever do is get caught in a lie with your mother. Because it underscores, I want to say underscores, but it undermines the principle. And as we begin to see this play out, you see a lack of compassion with coronavirus. Let me say it again. A lack of compassion with coronavirus that starts at the top and permeates down to the people who have little or no power. You know why? Because they live in a fantasy. How can you have a disease that kills people and you think you're immune to the disease because you don't wear a mask? Forget about wearing a mask for you. You don't wear a mask for other people. That tells me that you have no principle. That tells me you have no discipline. It tells me that the culture you have is not the culture I want to be a part of. And that, brothers and sisters, brings me to my final point. We must protect our women, not in a chauvinistic way. Not in a chauvinistic way, but we must protect our women in a way that they have protected us. And look at the principles and the principal way that they developed us in the worst of conditions, in the worst chauvinism, in the worst anti-feminism movements and efforts that you've ever seen. They still had the dignity to have a principled life and a principled understanding of how life should be. And those principles protected us. And all I'm saying is, my brothers and even sisters, young women, you need to get to the point where you understand a principled life, because I see now that the sisters don't protect the sisters. Thus, you have these records that got the bees and the hoes and all that type of stuff because you've been living the fantasy with men. You have to stop that. Okay? I'm going to get off my soapboxes. I'm tired. I got to go pray. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. And I wish you nothing but the best. In the words of all my great leaders, Elijah Muhammad, my mom, a ton of other people, Malcolm X, a ton of other people, even my 6th grade teacher. Shout out to Miss Alberta Jones, who one time told me, when I saw a boy try to jump on a girl, she said, "You better get in there and do something. You have problems with me." That was the only time I had a sanction from my teacher to punch another man in the mouth. To Miss Alberta Jones, I thank you. To all of you, I thank you. Please have a pleasant day. Anything I said that is incorrect, that's on me. Anything that I said that had benefit comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I want everybody to have a great day. Remember, POW is used in prison. In this word, it means protect our women. Peace and have an excellent day. Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your shout out show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next shout out show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarifa Tar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out tarifatar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.